The white-haired kid is looking defeated, and the chapter title hints he's a slave. Some chaotic fire energy, so you know things are about to get messy. We open on a straight-up massacre with bodies impaled and someone crying for their mom. The white-haired kid watches his mom stumble through the carnage, completely helpless. The mom, looking absolutely wrecked, is thinking about someone named Faya. The white-haired kid is freaking out, pulling at what turns out to be a slave collar. He's screaming to be untied, as if yelling at the chains is going to accomplish anything. Some huge masked brute shows up, calling the kid's mom a voodoo sorceress. The masked brute is holding a little girl, Faya, hostage to make the mom surrender. This dude gets right in her face, taunting her with her daughter's life. What a scumbag. The mom gives in, saying she'll sacrifice anything for Faya. It's over, man. The white-haired kid's eye glows red as he screams for his mom, looking possessed. He's reaching out, yelling about a promise she made to him in the past. A flashback shows his mom standing alone as he remembers their promise to stick together. The kid is having a full-blown breakdown, screaming they promised not to be separated. The narrator explains Voodoo grants wishes, basically setting up our boy for a revenge arc. The episode title, A Slave's Wish, drops, confirming that whole massacre was just the prologue. We cut to a logging camp where a new armored boss is addressing the unsold slaves. A new red-haired guy complains to the boss that their slave-selling results are trash. The boss, now identified as Iron Mask, is stressed about not getting a promotion. Iron Mask tells the slaves to prove their worth for the sake of his damn honor. A female slave asks the one question you never ask: what happens if they don't sell? The red-haired guy loses his mind, screaming that getting sold isn't optional for them. He orders the slaves to get to work while Iron Mask just stands there looking menacing. The red-haired guy gives the slaves a nasty, calculating look. Total scumbag vibes. The white-haired kid is just standing there, eyes glowing red, completely dead inside. The red-haired guy complains to Iron Mask about a sick girl they can't even give away. Iron Mask reveals he sold the kid's voodoo sorceress mom for a massive profit. The red-haired guy points out his boss ignored the Emperor's kill all sorcerers law. Iron Mask justifies breaking the law to get results, as we see a slave's shackled foot. A new slave guard explains the problem while carrying the sick girl in a sack. He dumps the sick girl Faya onto the ground like a sack of potatoes. Turns out Faya has zero voodoo talent, unlike her sorceress mom. What a raw deal. The red-haired guy tells Iron Mask there are other uses for unsold slaves. The slave guard berates Faya for not being able to do her forced labor properly. This guard gets right in her face, screaming at her to get up. Absolute scum. Faya begs for a break, explaining she's sick and has been traveling for days. The guard grabs his whip, threatening to hang her for daring to speak. Two other slaves finally step in, telling the guard to back off the kid. The bowl-cut girl calls him out, asking if he's prepared for her to die. The slave guard accuses the other slaves of only helping to avoid a bigger workload. He walks off laughing, mocking them for their supposed selfish nature. What a gaslighting piece of trash. The bowl-cut girl and the old man slave help Faya, saying it's just a favor. Two other slaves watch with disdain, unable to understand why anyone would help another. Faya looks up, completely exhausted and confused by the sudden kindness. The bowl-cut girl gives Faya a gentle, reassuring smile. The bowl-cut girl introduces herself as Tanir, officially making an ally. Tanir offers her hand to help Faya up from the ground. Someone aggressively throws their food into a pot, splashing gruel everywhere. The white-haired kid stands in the food line as another slave yells at him to move. A new blonde girl complains about her small food portion, but the bald slave just dismisses her. Tanir checks on Faya, who still looks completely drained after getting her meal. Tanir and the old man slave invite Faya to eat with them, forming a little support crew. Faya tries to turn them down, clearly not used to anyone being nice to her. Tanir isn't having it and insists Faya join them, refusing to let her isolate herself. Faya is still hesitant, but the scene transitions to show she eventually gave in. Faya immediately starts coughing, proving she's way sicker than she lets on. Faya explains she's been sick her whole life and barely survived a plague. The old man's slave connects with her story, saying a plague also hit his family. He reveals slave hunters preyed on them during a famine when they were too weak to fight. Faya questions their kindness, admitting she's grateful but totally confused by it. The old man slave explains they help because they're all suffering in the same shithole. Tanir reveals a voodoo sorceress once saved her, so she's paying the debt forward. Faya goes full emo, calling their kindness meaningless and shutting them down hard. She drops the guilt bomb, revealing her mom only got caught because she tried to save her. Faya insists she's useless without voodoo, telling them not to expect any payback. She physically recoils from Tanir, pushing away the only support she's been offered. Tanir isn't having any of that negativity, and tells Faya to have a little hope. The old man slave laughs, clarifying they just want everyone to be a little happier. Faya finally cracks, quietly accepting their kindness after they break down her walls. Tanir casually reveals her brother is mute because someone ripped his tongue out. A new long-haired bully slave shoves Faya to the ground for being in his way. Faya looks up from the dirt, completely terrified by the sudden aggression. The long-haired bully looms over her, calling her a disgusting little voodoo brat. He continues his tirade, accusing her of being a demon spawn who curses people. The bully tells Tanir's crew that helping Faya is irrational and will get them nothing. Tanir immediately fires back, yelling at the bully for being way too harsh. Faya admits the bully isn't entirely wrong about voodoo involving sacrifice and demons. The old man slave tries to comfort Faya, saying ignorant people are always scared. Faya clenches her fist, confirming voodoo is all about sacrifice and equivalent exchange. Faya lays down the voodoo law. You gotta offer something the spirits actually want. She credits her mom for this grim lesson as we flash back to a rainy day. The flashback drops us into a plague-ravaged village with people screaming for supplies. Faya's mom is desperately trying to use her voodoo to stop the plague. The mom is freaking out because the spirits are refusing her deal to save someone. She's at her absolute limit, wondering what else she could possibly offer as a sacrifice. A much younger Faya walks in on her mom struggling with a sick patient. Young Faya spots blood and her mom warns her to stay out, but she's already seen it. Her mom panics, grabbing Faya's arm, who reveals she intentionally cut herself. Faya admits she cut herself to offer blood for voodoo, absolutely horrifying her mom. Young Faya cries that her blood sacrifice was rejected, confirming she's always felt useless. The mom begs Faya never to self-harm for voodoo again, trying to shield her from that life. The mom comforts Faya while treating her arm, ending the flashback on a rare, warm moment. We snap back to the present with a close-up of the white-haired kid's eye. The white-haired kid is sleeping under a ragged blanket, getting zero rest in this hellhole. His eye shoots open in absolute terror, signaling the start of a gnarly nightmare. His dream is a straight-up horror show, flashing back to a mangled corpse from the massacre. The nightmare shows his own face covered in blood, forcing him to relive the trauma. He wakes up hyperventilating, clutching his blanket in a full-blown panic attack. He violently coughs up blood, revealing this nightmare has some serious physical after-effects. Tanir wakes up in a panic, asking Faya what's wrong with her. Faya tells Tanir to stay back, realizing she's coughing up blood again. Faya spits blood on the ground, calling Tanir's advice to have hope pointless. Faya declares that someone as worthless as her has no right to hope. A slave yells that a tree is collapsing, a not-so-subtle metaphor for Faya's condition. The white-haired kid and other slaves watch the massive tree crash down. The long-haired bully slave screams at everyone to work faster to meet their quota. The white-haired kid is completely exhausted, starting a self-torturing internal monologue. He wonders if having voodoo powers back during the massacre would have changed things. He stares at a tree stump, asking himself if he could have prevented it all. A slave guard herds the slaves into wagons, yelling about moving to the shipping yard. Tanir's mute brother asks their father, the old man slave, if she's in the other wagon. Tanir questions a guard about being separated and gets screamed at for daring to ask. The two disdainful slaves are still judging Tanir's crew for helping Faya, calling them idiots. The blonde girl from the food line looks defeated, agreeing their kindness was a waste. The slaves are crammed into the dark, bumpy wagon, all looking completely broken on their way out. A bandaged slave voices his fear of not being sold, showing how deep the desperation runs. A scarred slave gives a grim reality check, saying being sold just means a different hell. Another slave mentions death arenas as Tanir and her brother listen in absolute despair. The white-haired kid states they have no home and have lost the right to wish for anything. Tanir tries to give a pep talk about hope, still trying to be the moral compass. The white-haired kid coughs, hearing the word hope like it's a foreign language. He has an internal monologue, revealing he does have one wish left in him. The kid admits his only wish is to see his mom one last time before he dies. The wagon suddenly jolts, throwing the already miserable slaves into a chaotic pile. Tanir and a beat-up slave wonder if they've finally arrived at their destination. The scarred slave volunteers to peek outside and see what the hell is going on. He climbs out of the wagon, asking about the other slaves who were separated. A slave inside the wagon wonders what's happening, showing their shackled, helpless hand. The scarred slave is instantly impaled by a shadowy attack. So much for that guy. Tanir's mute brother and the other slaves stare in absolute horror at the carnage outside. A new masked figure reveals their wagon was never going to the shipping yard. Surprise! It's another ambush. The new masked figure taunts the dead scarred slave about having false hope. This guy's a real charmer. The white-haired kid looks horrified as the dude says a slave's wishes don't matter. Way to kick a kid when he's down. The masked figure lectures the slaves that wishes require value, echoing Faya's voodoo lesson. He reveals a voodoo sorceress taught him that lesson, confirming he's in the same shady business. He explains this sorceress buys his trash-tier slaves for sacrifices as his men attack. The masked figure monologues about honor while his goons slaughter the helpless slaves. Another promotion-hungry psycho. He declares he'll use any power for his ambition, giving us a classic villain crazy eye shot. The massacre continues inside the wagon, with another slave getting brutally impaled. Tanir's mute brother screams as the scarred slave gets got, splattering blood all over him. Another slave gets a spear straight through the jaw, because this is just massacre number 3. The white-haired kid watches the carnage, whispering no as his world ends again. He has an internal monologue, realizing his wish to see his mom didn't save anyone. The white-haired kid looks down to see he's been stabbed right through the gut. He has a moment of grim acceptance, finally understanding the price of his wish. The kid concludes it was wrong to wish at all as we see everyone is dead. The white-haired kid is dragged away from the pile of corpses, leaving a trail of blood. The masked figure orders his men to dump the bodies, confirming the other wagon is safe. The masked figure scoffs that Faya is useless without Voodoo, explaining why she was spared. Iron Mask tells the red-haired guy that Faya dying is a mercy. What a psycho. He reveals a forest witch buys voodoo sorcerers as he drags the white-haired kid. Iron Mask taunts the kid, revealing he sold his beast brother to the same witch. A blindfolded goon gets Iron Mask's attention, pointing out something in the carnage. The goon reveals Tanir is still alive, asking his boss what to do with her. Iron Mask gives his men permission to play with Tanir, sealing her absolutely grim fate. We cut to Tanir's dead body, confirming they murdered the last shred of hope. A red voodoo glow suddenly flares from the white-haired kid's fatal stab wound. A flashback shows the mom telling Faya that voodoo will heal her self-inflicted wound. The mom teaches Faya that voodoo is a deal where both sides get what they want. Young Faya explains that none of her sacrifices have ever been enough to grant a wish. She asks her mom if she's worthless, dropping the most heartbreaking question a kid can ask. The mom shuts that down immediately, telling Faya she's the most precious thing in her life. The mom holds Faya close, about to drop some serious voodoo lore on her. She explains that special spirits called Elwa are the ones who grant wishes for a price. The mom says law target desperate people because they'll sacrifice anything for their wish. Her one wish is to never be separated from Faya, but Faya promises it'll never happen. The flashback confirms this is the exact promise the white-haired kid was screaming about earlier. Back in the present, the dying white-haired kid's final wish starts to form. A creepy-ass spirit shows up in his mind, asking him what he wants. Showtime. The Elwa spirit appears in the white-haired kid's mind, asking what he wishes for. The kid wishes to get his mom back, offering to sacrifice everything he has. The Elwa spirit shows its creepy, scribbled face, accepting the kid's desperate offer. The voodoo contract is sealed with 2 simple words. The deal is made. A grotesque tree of dark voodoo energy erupts from the pile of slaughtered slaves. The 2 disdainful slaves and the bald slave freak out, recognizing the demonic power. The white-haired kid's body is completely consumed by the dark voodoo he just unleashed. The red-haired guy panics while Iron Mask yells at him to capture the voodoo user. Iron Mask sees another slave to sell, ordering his men to attack for his promotion. The goons charge the voodoo monster, completely underestimating the hell they just walked into. One of Iron Mask's goons gets his entire head vaporized by the voodoo monster's attack. The voodoo monster's tendrils completely shred the goon's body into a bloody mess. The new voodoo monster unleashes a devastatingly fast slash with its dark powers. The kid, now wearing a demonic mask, tears another guard apart in mid-air. The red-haired guy stares in disbelief, realizing how badly they just screwed up. The remaining goons panic, screaming that the kid has transformed into a total monster. A goon tries to warn Iron Mask, but the voodoo monster is already on him. The voodoo monster goes on an absolute rampage, a whirlwind of red voodoo death. A close-up shows the kid's new demonic mask with its creepy, glowing red eyes. The voodoo monster continues the slaughter, ripping through the guards with raw power. One of Iron Mask's goons lies dying on the ground after getting absolutely demolished. The voodoo monster stomps the goon's head into a bloody pulp. Talk about overkill. A close-up reveals the voodoo monster's terrifying new mask and demonic appearance. Iron Mask tells the monster to stop, calling him a voodoo sorceress. Wrong guy, genius. He tries to negotiate, asking the voodoo monster what its wish is. You're about to find out. A flashback shows the original masked brute holding the mom hostage to make her surrender. The voodoo monster whispers Faya's name, confirming the white-haired kid is still in there. The voodoo monster ignores Iron Mask's desperate yelling and keeps walking toward him. Iron Mask panics, offering to snitch on the forest witch who bought the kid's mom. A chaotic flashback shows the mom protecting Faya from the masked brute's attack. A flashback shows the mom's horrified face during the initial massacre. This is what he's fighting for. The voodoo monster's dark power slashes across the memory of his mom's face. The narrator recaps that voodoo grants wishes, as we see the monster's glowing eye. The narration reminds us that wishes require a sacrifice of equivalent value. No kidding. A hand is shown gripping a massive blood-stained cleaver. Great, more weapons. The Loa spirit asks what someone who has lost everything could possibly wish for. A bloody red title card drops, showing the voodoo monster standing over the carnage. Faya is shown looking traumatized as a caption calls her the one casting flames of revenge. A close-up shot shows off the voodoo monster's new demonic horns and form. A new character's eyes are shown as a caption asks what life is without wishes. Iron Mask complains about slaves with dead eyes because apparently that's bad for business. The red-haired guy monologues that a slave's only value is what they sell for. He whines that broken slaves like Faya won't help him meet his sales quota. A new long-haired guy with a cleaver tells Faya to follow him, calling her a voodoo brat. Faya asks where they're going as a spiderweb fills the panel. Yeah, this isn't good. The new guy, Tyburn, leads Faya through the woods while she carries firewood for him. Faya asks why he hates sorcerers, and he calls them people who cheat to get ahead. Tyburn claims he can't stand anything unreasonable, which is rich coming from this dude. He suddenly shoves his massive cleaver at Faya, scaring the absolute hell out of her. Tyburn orders the sick little girl to split a whole pile of firewood with the giant blade. Tyburn tells Faya to hurry up, gesturing to the impossible amount of wood she has to chop. Faya struggles to even lift the massive cleaver, complaining that it's way too heavy. Tyburn mocks Faya for depending on others, flashing back to her now-dead friends. He taunts her about her useless voodoo, reminding her it's why her mom got sold off. Fueled by rage and despair, Faya finally brings the cleaver down on a log. Faya explains her mom only surrendered because she was taken hostage, still blaming herself. She cries, desperately trying to believe her mom's skills landed her in a better place. Tyburn cuts her off, telling her she's naive and doesn't know what she's talking about. He shatters her hope, suggesting her mom is probably some rich guy's abused plaything now. Faya completely breaks down, screaming in denial at the horrifying thought of her mom's fate. Tyburn twists the knife, saying her mom's sacrifice was pointless since they both got screwed. He asks Faya if her life has any meaning, and she weakly insists that it does. Faya screams that her life has meaning, finally getting a grip on that giant-ass cleaver. She yells that she made a promise, just like her brother did before his own breakdown. Faya's eyes glow red as she vows to definitely get her mom back. It runs in the family. A demonic aura explodes behind Faya as she screams her promise to save her mom. We cut to the voodoo monster chained up and bloody, coughing out Faya's name. The voodoo monster straight up chops off his own hand to escape his chains. Absolute savage. His severed hand and creepy mask hit the floor as he makes his escape. The white-haired kid's arm regenerates with dark voodoo tendrils, so that's a new trick. The voodoo monster clutches its head, looking like the voodoo power-up is one hell of a migraine. The white-haired kid screams as he rips the demonic mask right off his own face. The creepy voodoo mask hits the dirt, signaling the end of his absolute rampage. He's back to his normal self, gasping for air amidst the bodies he just created. The kid stares in horror at Tanir's dead body, finally seeing what happened to her. His eyes scan over the corpse of a guard, the reality of the massacre slowly sinking in. He's wide-eyed with shock, realizing he's standing in the middle of a goddamn graveyard. The white-haired kid breaks down, clutching his head in absolute agony and confusion. He violently coughs up a massive spray of blood. That voodoo deal has a gnarly price. He asks himself if he did all this, confirming he has zero memory of his rampage. The white-haired kid stumbles forward, looking for Tanir, completely unaware she's already dead. The two disdainful slaves freak out, screaming at the kid to get away from them. One of the surviving slaves points at him, calling him a murderer. Well, she's not wrong. The kid tries to deny it, still totally clueless about the massacre he just committed. The two slaves call him a monster as they back away from the voodoo-laced crime scene. He keeps trying to plead his case, but the amnesia defense isn't working on anyone. He watches the last survivors flee in terror, screaming for the one friend he couldn't save. The kid collapses to his knees, begging them to wait, now completely and utterly alone. His hand hits the dirt in defeat, finally realizing he's been abandoned by everyone. The white-haired kid finally breaks down crying, crushed by the price of his wish. The white-haired kid is on his knees, screaming his lungs out in the middle of nowhere. He's face down in the dirt, muttering in denial about the absolute hell he just unleashed. The kid screams that this bloody massacre is the exact opposite of what he wished for. The creepy Elwa spirit pops in to ask if he regrets the deal. Talk about bad timing. A new masked character shakes the kid, yelling at him for taking off the voodoo mask. The white-haired kid is completely lost, having no memory of the mask or his rampage. The new masked character is now hanging upside down, telling him to stop freaking out. The white-haired kid stares in silent horror, his one visible eye wide with shock. The masked character orders him to put the mask back on and surrender his body. The kid finally snaps, demanding to know who the hell this new person is. The new masked character floats down, informing the white-haired kid that their interaction was a deal. The masked character gets right in his face, calling him a fool for forgetting their deal. The white-haired kid finally connects the voice to the creepy Elwa spirit from his nightmare. The masked character introduces itself as Masked Child, Elwa, confirming the kid's worst fears. Masked Child gives him a condescending voodoo lesson, asking if his mom taught him nothing. A flashback confirms his mom did teach him, so he really has no excuse for being surprised. The white-haired kid screams at Masked Child to get out of his head. Too late, buddy. Masked Child plays dumb, reminding the kid he's the one who willingly offered up everything. The Elwa lays out the terms, his wish to find his mom in exchange for his everything. Masked Child clarifies that everything includes his freedom. The contract is binding, kid. Masked Child claims ownership of the white-haired kid, whose eye glows with its demonic power. The white-haired kid tries to back out of the deal, saying he'll save his mom himself. Masked Child complains it's stuck with him, explaining their voodoo contract is mutually binding. The Elwa clarifies their bond is an unbreakable chain, but new conditions can be added. Masked Child gets impatient and orders the kid to put the mask on and surrender his body. The kid asks what the Elwa wants with his body, and it just calls him a brat. A single word drops, setting the mood for the Elwa's entire motivation: resentment. Masked Child reveals it was born from unjust souls and its only goal is to spread that pain. The Elwa declares its desire is to inflict endless resentment, using the kid as its vessel. We cut back to Faya, who is being led through the woods by that scumbag Tyburn. A flashback shows the mom taking the young white-haired kid to meet the Elwa. The kid recalls never being chosen by Elwa, confirming his lifelong feeling of uselessness. He remembers those days with his mom as happy, a stark contrast to his current hell. The white-haired kid realizes his wish to find his mom comes with a massive body count. He questions how long this cycle of slaughter will continue just to fulfill his one wish. The kid stares at his bloody hand, horrified at the thought of meeting his mom like this. He decides he can't accept this outcome and starts looking for a way to cancel the deal. Masked Child grabs him, mocking his attempt to make a new deal with zero collateral. The Elwa tells the kid his current value is zero, shutting down any hope of renegotiating. The kid clenches his fist, insisting he never wanted to kill anyone to see his mom. The white-haired kid stands his ground, insisting he made a promise to his mom. A flashback shows him and Masked Child surrounded by monsters as he recalls that promise. Masked Child suddenly yanks the kid out of the way of a charging monster. The white-haired kid freaks out, asking what the hell these new monsters are. Masked Child explains they're beasts, failed Elwa who literally eat human souls for a living. The kid watches a beast drag a corpse, horrified by the sheer number of them. One of the disdainful slaves who fled is screaming for help as the beasts close in. Masked Child blames the kid for the attack as the other disdainful slave gets mauled. The Elwa reveals the souls of the guards he killed are what attracted the beasts. The white-haired kid panics, screaming that they have to run away from his mess. Masked Child threatens to get physical if the kid doesn't willingly put the mask back on. The white-haired kid is completely baffled by the Elwa's sudden aggression. Masked Child lunges at the kid, demanding he surrender his body for the voodoo contract. The white-haired kid gets absolutely launched backward by the Elwa's forceful possession. His body contorts as he slams into the ground, the Elwa hijacking him completely. The kid lies on the ground, twitching uncontrollably as the possession takes hold. Masked Child forces the kid's own hands to put the demonic mask back on his face. A massive beast corners one of the fleeing slaves, ready to collect another soul. The newly reformed voodoo monster channels power through the mask's eyepiece. The voodoo monster effortlessly slices the beast's head clean in half. So much for that threat. The beast let out a collective, grotesque scream, looking like a failed biology experiment. Masked Child, now piloting the voodoo monster, revels in having a living body to command. The Elwa monologues about the value of life while facing down an entire horde of soul eaters. The voodoo monster decides to warm up by tearing through the beasts in a red blur of death. We cut back to Tyburn laughing maniacally while gripping his cleaver, still bullying Faya. Mask Child realizes the kid's memories are fragmented, but vows to use his body to find the mom. The last surviving disdainful slave is cornered by a massive beast. Karma's a real bitch, huh? The voodoo monster impales the beast with a red energy blast, calling it an obstacle. He looms over the slave he just accidentally saved and coldly tells her to get lost. The voodoo monster unleashes a massive voodoo explosion, wiping out the remaining soul eaters. Mask Child admits it's struggling to control the kid's body. So much for an easy possession. The Elwa explains that hijacking a body with a soul still inside is a real pain. The voodoo monster walks over the beast corpses, vowing to eventually get full control. A massive new beast erupts from the ground, sending the voodoo monster flying. The giant beast looms over the voodoo monster, literally begging to be killed. The voodoo monster notes the beast can talk and is still hungry for more souls. The voodoo monster charges the giant beast, laughing as it gets attacked by spikes. A full-color panel shows the voodoo monster mid-air in a dynamic, chaotic pose. The voodoo monster gets absolutely skewered by the beast's shadowy tendrils. The voodoo monster stands over the defeated beast, screaming that it's sick of fighting. The voodoo monster yells it has no time for the beasts surrounding it. This Elwa has places to be, man. A new character drops in and summons a lightning strike out of nowhere. Talk about a dramatic entrance. The voodoo monster is stunned as the lightning attack completely obliterates the beasts. The new cloaked guy says he came for the beasts but found our boy instead. That's not a compliment. The cloaked guy notes the voodoo monster's eyes are full of resentment. He's not wrong. That's the Elwa's whole brand. The cloaked guy correctly guesses a Elway took over, and Mask Child asks if he's another sorcerer. The cloaked guy grabs the voodoo monster, who notices his prosthetic hand has 6 fingers. That's not standard issue. The new guy confirms he's a voodoo sorcerer, adjusting his 6-fingered hand. Okay, this just got interesting. The voodoo monster stands over the dead beasts as the new sorcerer continues his introduction. The new sorcerer reveals he's a hunter who targets monsters like him. Great, another problem to deal with. The new cloaked guy shows off his 6-fingered prosthetic hand. This dude's got custom parts. The cloaked guy gives a serious look, clearly not here to make friends with our boy. The last disdainful slave gasps for air, finally realizing she's completely out of her depth. Mask Child is stunned, realizing this new sorcerer just one-shotted the monster he was fighting. The disdainful slave stares at the dead beast, wondering who this new lightning-wielding savior is. The cloaked guy unleashes a brutal combo, absolutely demolishing the voodoo monster. The cloaked guy moves at insane speed, showing he's way out of the voodoo monster's league. The voodoo monster gets absolutely launched, his body contorting from the hunter's powerful strike. The voodoo monster lands hard on a rock, completely taken down by the new guy's assault. The cloaked guy lands perfectly, looking down on the monster he just effortlessly defeated. The cloaked guy easily dodges tree trunks, laughing that the voodoo monster's attacks are useless. The voodoo monster glares as the cloaked guy calls him slow for just throwing logs. The cloaked guy threatens to kill him like Iron Mask, then gets confused about the connection. The voodoo monster perches on a dead tree as the cloaked guy declares the fight is over. The cloaked guy stares up, completely focused on taking down his voodoo-possessed target. The voodoo monster grips his weapon, finally deciding it's time to get serious. The voodoo monster declares it's his turn to attack, ready to switch from defense to offense. The voodoo monster blitzes behind the cloaked guy, who looks completely shocked by the speed. The voodoo monster fires a voodoo energy blast, screaming for the hunter to die. The voodoo monster's attack misses as the cloaked guy dodges at the last second. The voodoo monster charges forward, screaming he's going to tear the hunter to pieces. The hunter easily dodges the voodoo monster's wild slashes, looking completely unfazed. The cloaked guy lands a brutal counterpunch right in the voodoo monster's face. He follows up with a powerful slash, sending the voodoo monster flying across the ground. The voodoo monster cries out in pain, finally getting a taste of a real fight. Mask Child creates shadow clones, swarming the hunter with a classic desperation move. The cloaked guy's eye narrows, realizing it's time to end this little warm-up. He effortlessly cuts down a clone, repeating that the monster is just too slow. The voodoo monster leaps into a tree, taunting that the hunter can't catch him. The cloaked guy correctly deduces Mask Child hasn't fully adapted to the kid's body. The voodoo monster is pissed the hunter saw through its body at its limit bluff. Mask Child's monologue reveals the body is wrecked, but its pride won't let it retreat. The voodoo monster tries to act tough, claiming its real power hasn't even been shown. The cloaked guy calls the bluff, firing a point-blank lightning blast from his prosthetic hand. The lightning attack connects, blowing the voodoo monster's hand to absolute smithereens. A close-up shows the voodoo monster's hand getting completely disintegrated by the attack. The cloaked guy calls the monster's voodoo pathetic as it plummets from the tree. The hunter follows up with a kick that shatters the entire tree trunk. This is just a beatdown. The voodoo monster realizes the hunter either adapted to its speed or just baited it. The cloaked guy drops a cold line saying nothing is faster than lightning. Game over, man. The cloaked guy unleashes another brutal lightning attack from his custom prosthetic hand. The voodoo monster gets absolutely engulfed in the hunter's massive energy blast. Our boy gets launched through the air, completely ragdolled by the hunter's assault. The voodoo monster slams face first into the dirt, finally getting put down for a second. The cloaked guy questions the monster's identity, confused about the iron mask connection. The hunter finally realizes he's just been beating up a possessed slave kid. He worries the kid's body will die if he doesn't intervene. A little late for that, my guy. The cloaked guy decides to save him but is stopped by a sudden movement from the kid. The voodoo monster struggles back to his feet, declaring the fight isn't over yet. A close-up shows a creepy voodoo charm dripping blood. He's pulling out the dark arts now. The cloaked guy reacts with shock as the voodoo monster pulls out his new trick. The cloaked guy gets completely constricted by red voodoo tendrils, calling the move ridiculous. The hunter admits the kid's willpower is dangerous and decides he has to end this now. The voodoo monster taunts the paralyzed hunter, asking how it feels to be totally helpless. Mask Child stands over the hunter, asking if he finally understands whose voodoo is superior. The voodoo monster goes full psycho, screaming he wants to hear the hunter's bones crumble. The cloaked guy gets absolutely crushed by the dark voodoo tendrils squeezing him. Mask Child laughs, promising to destroy the hunter's mask and turn his face into rags. The voodoo monster unleashes a final explosive attack, screaming for the hunter to die. The cloaked guy holds up one finger, calmly admitting something in the middle of the attack. The cloaked guy admits the voodoo monster is physically superior while still trapped in his tendrils. The hunter says physical power isn't everything and prepares to show him what real voodoo is. The cloaked guy holds up his six-fingered hand, about to drop a serious voodoo lesson on our boy. A massive blue lightning explosion erupts, completely obliterating the voodoo monster at point-blank range. The aftermath shows a smoking crater where the forest used to be. Absolute devastation. We cut to the white-haired kid's mindscape where he's a child again, calling out his own name. Faya sees his mom in the void, asking where she's been while his reflection shows his older self. The mom reminds Faya of their promise not to be separated, hitting him with that core trauma. Faya breaks down crying, trying to tell his mom everything that happened since they were torn apart. He admits he was terrified by everything he went through, finally letting his guard down. Faya tells his mom's vision he can't endure this anymore, finally breaking down. He screams that he can't stand being separated from her again, doubling down on his wish. A bowl of food is violently knocked over, snapping us back to another shitty memory. Faya stands chained and confused, his meal spilled on the ground, back to slave life trauma. The ghosts of Iron Mask and other dead slaves ask why he's the only survivor. A close-up of a screaming corpse gives us a front-row seat to his nightmare fuel. The hands of the dead pull Faya down into a sea of his own guilt. Faya screams for the corpses to let him go, completely overwhelmed by his trauma. He desperately calls for his mom to help him as the dead drag him under. His mom's hand reaches out, offering him a way out of his mental hellscape. The mom's face in his nightmare twists into a monster asking who he is. The white-haired kid's eyes snap open, finally waking up from that mental hellscape. A bunch of creepy doll-like spirits stare down, announcing that he's awake. He jolts up in bed, screaming as the weird little creatures swarm around him. The kid clutches his bandaged body, confused and in pain from the hunter's beatdown. He sits in a strange workshop wondering what happened after he got absolutely wrecked. He looks at jars of creepy specimens, remembering he was in the forest last. A new masked woman appears, casually greeting him like he didn't just survive a massacre. A small frog-like spirit just calls the whole situation loco. No kidding, little dude. The white-haired kid freaks out, demanding to know who this new masked person is. The kid connects the dots. This masked woman is the forest witch who bought his mom. Shan's little spirits violently shove Faya, sending his food flying. Her hospitality is just top-notch. Faya grits his teeth in pain on the floor. This welcome party is just another round of torture. The cloaked guy walks in, telling someone to stop their tricks on patients. About time someone stepped in. The cloaked guy reveals the witch's name is Shan, who just complains he's a nag. What a charming duo. Faya is completely confused about the tricks, still processing the last 24 hours of hell. The cloaked guy explains they're voodoo sorcerers who saved him from the Elwa, so they're not totally evil maybe. The cloaked guy introduces himself as Pellini, a beast hunter, and our boy introduces himself as Faya. Pellini asks Faya if he remembers his rampage, but the kid's memory is a painful blur. Convenient trauma-induced amnesia. Faya vaguely recalls fighting Pellini, and Shan tells him he made a huge mistake. Yeah, no kidding, lady. Shan schools Faya on Voodoo 101, calling him a dumbass for offering his own body. Faya spills his whole traumatic backstory, and Pellini is surprised he remembers anything at all. Faya explains he's stuck with Mask Child and gets distracted by Shan's creepy little ghost dolls. Shan screams at Faya for touching her stuff, proving her hospitality is still absolute trash. Shan explains her creepy dolls are soul vessels, admitting one was trying to protect him. Faya learns that these totems are basically Elwa condos, giving them a foothold in the real world. Pellini holds up the cursed mask, confirming that the Elwa isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Pellini gives a lecture on Elwa personalities, confirming some are just bigger assholes than others. Pellini reminds Faya his Elwa's only hobby is resentment, so expect more body snatching and murder. Pellini tries to demonstrate a point by attempting to smash one of the Elwa totems with his hands. Shan yells her totems are tough, but Faya points out Pellini already put a hole in one. Faya asks if he's stuck with Mask Child, and Shan just straight up calls him a walking time bomb. Pellini holds another one of the creepy Elwa dolls, showing he's not intimidated by them at all. Faya internally debates trusting them, since their voodoo lessons match what his mom taught him. Pellini reveals there's a difficult solution, and Faya's first thought is still his mom. Faya desperately asks what the solution is, latching onto the first bit of hope he's been offered. Pellini says voodoo problems need voodoo solutions, holding up an invitation addressed to Shan. Pellini explains the invite is from House, a revolutionary group of voodoo sorcerers. Pellini tells Faya that since he was a slave, this House group will definitely help him. Shan warns Faya the journey is perilous since Mask Child could wake up and rampage again. Shan casually tells Faya she could just kill him right now to solve the whole Elwa problem. Faya has an internal monologue, realizing being a voodoo sorcerer isn't for just anyone. He flashes back to his mom being the village's only sorceress and sacrificing herself for him. Faya accepts he's already committed irreversible acts, remembering the bloody massacre. He resolves to keep moving forward, even if his path is filled with more pain and regret. Faya states his wish was to get his mom back from the forest witch, aka the lady in the room. He remembers his promise to his mom that they would never be separated again. Faya looks at the ghosts of the dead slaves, declaring he'll sacrifice everything for his wish. He declares he'll become a voodoo sorcerer, finally deciding to take control of his fate. Faya's internal monologue ends with his ultimate goal, break the chains and rescue his mom. Faya clutches a totem, declaring his wish with a look of pure determination. Shan's little frog spirit calls the whole situation loco. You're not wrong, little guy. Shan tells Pellini to get ready, confirming Faya's mom is valuable and likely alive. Pellini explains they're heading to the house headquarters in a strange city nearby. Pellini introduces Maze, the city of voodoo sorcerers, a whole city of these psychos. We cut to a dark forest at night because nothing good ever happens in the daytime. A new cloaked figure walks over a bunch of shadowy tendrils on the ground. The new cloaked figure walks through a field of corpses. This story's body count is insane. The cloaked figure touches a metal device on a body, muttering it's not enough. The cloaked figure looks down, saying he needs more than this. Great. Another psycho with a quota. A new cloaked figure holds a severed monster head, calling people slaves of desire. The monologue warns about the desires in our hearts. Yeah, Faya learned that lesson the hard way. A group of slaves pray as the narration calls desire a soul-devouring monster. This is literally the origin story for the beasts. A new blindfolded nun calls desire a bottomless abyss you can't escape alone. She's basically giving Voodoo 101 to the masses. The blindfolded nun preaches to the slaves about a 4,000-year-old comet, so this cult has some ancient history. Two new scumbags mock the slaves for listening to scripture. These guys look like they're one bad day away from becoming beasts themselves. A nun with glasses tells a slave that their business is essential for the empire. The church and the slave trade, a classic combo. The nun with glasses speculates the blindfolded nun was pardoned for being burned. Sounds like this cult has some brutal initiation rites. The two scumbags laugh about the nun, but one warns the other not to mess with the cult. Smart move, they're probably all psychos. A shadowy rabbit creature appears before a bandaged hand reaches out. Looks like someone's about to use some voodoo. Faya laughs after failing another voodoo attempt while Pellini watches him train. Pellini tells Faya to keep practicing a voodoo technique that doesn't require the mask. We get a Voodoo 101 lesson explaining that willpower is the source of a sorcerer's power. A diagram shows the sorcerer-Elwa deal is a two-way street of mutual desire. Polini's six-fingered hand shows the difference between pure willpower voodoo and Lawa-assisted voodoo. Faya worries about Masked Child taking over his body again during a fight. Polini explains Shan's voodoo has sealed the Elwa in the mask, forcing it to sleep. Polini warns that Shan's seal is temporary, so they have to reach Maze fast. Faya agrees to the plan, shown practicing his new voodoo projectile attack. Faya asks about Polini's Elwa, who reveals it's a Loa of wishes, not resentment. Polini explains Loa are categorized by 5 winds, confirming his is a female Loa of wishes. Polini tells Faya his weapon voodoo is pure resentment, which is pretty on brand for him. Faya wishes Shan came along, and Polini admits she's the one who taught him everything. Polini says Shan was too busy but sent her precious ghost totem with them for the ride. Polini shoves the little ghost totem back into Faya's cloak while thinking about Shan. A flashback shows Shan working as Faya remembers she was a good person despite the rough start. The flashback shows Shan adjusting Faya's collar to hide his slave brand scars. Shan gives Faya some solid advice about how being a former slave is a death sentence. Faya finally asks Polini why they're helping a random kid they just met. Faya asks if it's just pity because he's a child, putting Polini on the spot. Polini's internal monologue confirms he knew Iron Mask was a slave trader, so he's just another bystander. Polini gives Faya the oppressed sorcerers must unite speech. Yeah, we've heard this one before. He admits some sorcerers are malicious, name-dropping his own mentor, Shan. That's cold, dude. Polini declares he wants to be a better person, and Faya looks like he's actually buying it. Faya flashes back to Tanir and the other dead slaves who were kind to him. Cue the trauma montage. Faya internally questions how people can be selfless in a world this screwed up. Welcome to the real world, kid. Faya wishes he could see Tanir again as they walk into a field of crucified corpses. Bad timing. Faya freaks out at the sight of the grotesque chained-up corpse totems. Can't blame him, that's nightmare fuel. Faya stares in horror, asking what the hell these twisted corpse sculptures are. Polini explains they're soul scarecrows made from dead slaves to ward off beasts. That's messed up. Polini explains the symbol belongs to an anti-voodoo sect working for the Emperor. Great, another enemy faction. Faya realizes he and his mom almost ended up as one of those corpse scarecrows. Welcome to the trauma train, kid. Polini suddenly shushes Faya, sensing that they're no longer alone in the woods. Polini suspects a beast has been drawn to the ghost totem Shan gave them. That gift is already a liability. Polini shoves Faya behind him, ready to throw down with whatever's coming. A new cloaked figure trips and faceplants right in front of them, so much for a dramatic entrance. Polini stares in absolute confusion, completely thrown off by the clumsy intruder. The figure is revealed to be the blindfolded nun from that weird cult earlier. The blindfolded nun politely asks the two travelers if they can spare some food. This has to be a trap. Faya is completely baffled by the nun's request, because nothing in his life is ever simple. Faya gives the blindfolded nun a bowl of food, who thanks him for the meal. The blindfolded nun dramatically thanks them for saving her from starvation, while Faya looks suspicious. Faya whispers to Polini, realizing the nun is from the anti-voodoo cult and is probably dangerous. Polini questions the nun, asking why a blind woman is traveling alone on such a dangerous road. The nun claims her cult's protection keeps her safe, feeling like she's being interrogated. The blindfolded nun cuts to the chase, asking them if they're voodoo sorcerers. Faya immediately panics and tries to deny it. This kid cannot lie to save his life. The nun smiles, explaining that while she can't see, she has a very good sense of smell. She says they have a peculiar scent, but promises no hostility since they shared food. Polini tries to get rid of her, asking if there's a village nearby for her to rest. Polini calls out the blindfolded nun's story, asking why she wants to travel together if she's always alone. Polini internally decides that traveling with the nun is the safest bet to avoid trouble in cult territory. His monologue reveals he's confident he can take her down if she tries anything. Famous last words, my guy. The blindfolded nun pats Faya's head, calling their meeting fate while he looks completely startled. The nun Rhoda introduces herself while getting way too close to Faya. Personal space is not in her vocabulary. Faya introduces himself, looking completely dazed by Rhoda's sudden and weirdly intimate greeting. Faya's internal monologue reveals Rhoda reminds him of his mom. Bro, that's a trap and you're walking right into it. They arrive at the village, which is just a bunch of abandoned ruins. So much for a safe place to rest. Faya looks at the boarded-up buildings, asking where all the people went. Yeah, this place is a ghost town. Rhoda gets weirdly excited about the mystery, and Polini calls her out on her creepy enthusiasm. Faya corrects himself, realizing the villagers aren't gone, they're just hiding in fear. Rhoda confirms his suspicion with her creepy super senses, noting everyone is hiding indoors. The blindfolded nun smiles and cheerfully announces she can smell blood. This is not a good sign. A massive, shadowy beast roars, confirming exactly why everyone is hiding. Showtime. A terrified little girl sits among the corpses of two beasts and a dead villager. Polini and Faya spot the girl, with Polini pointing out she's about to be monster food. Polini notes the corpse scarecrows failed as Shan's ghost totem starts sparking. So much for protection. Rhoda says there's no other choice, looking like she's about to step in. Polini cuts her off, unleashing his signature lightning strike from his prosthetic hand. The lightning attack completely vaporizes the beast, saving the kid in a massive explosion. The little girl stares in absolute shock, completely traumatized by the whole ordeal. The trio checks on the traumatized girl, asking where all the other adults went. A large villager finally shows up, suspiciously demanding to know who they are. The villager admits they use people as bait, then immediately calls them out as voodoo sorcerers. A whole mob of villagers surrounds them, accusing them of being heretics trying to kidnap the kid. The girl's mom rallies the villagers to attack the very people who just saved her daughter. Faya wonders why these cowards are suddenly brave enough to fight now that the monster is gone. Polini accepts that sorcerers are hated everywhere and prepares to throw down with the mob. Rhoda steps in to de-escalate, telling the terrified villagers to calm the hell down. Rhoda pulls a fast one, claiming she's a nun escorting them on the Emperor's orders. Rhoda spins a wild lie, calling Faya and Polini the Emperor's long-lost repentant children. She guarantees their safety in the name of the Emperor, selling the ridiculous story with a creepy smile. Faya internally calls out her bullshit, wondering if nuns are even allowed to lie this hard. The cowardly villagers look skeptical, wondering if they should actually believe this convenient story. A villager's eye widens in shock as the realization hits. Yeah, they totally bought the lie. The villagers now serve them a feast, calling them holy pilgrims. Talk about a complete 180. The villagers beg them to put in a good word with the cult, desperate to save their own asses. The lead villager nervously tells them to relax after just trying to murder them. The audacity is insane. Another villager with a cult necklace tells them to stay as long as they want. These guys flip-flop hard. Rhoda graciously accepts their hospitality, blessing them with a smile. She played these chumps like a damn fiddle. A villager sucks up to the group, agreeing with whatever they're saying. These guys have zero spine. Rhoda gives a creepy blessing over the feast, fully committing to her holy woman act. Rhoda inhales her food like a vacuum cleaner as Faya watches, completely stunned. Polini watches Rhoda eat, commenting on how much she's enjoying the free meal. Rhoda defends her massive appetite, asking if there's a law against nuns eating well. Faya internally admits he can't eat after seeing those corpse scarecrows. Trauma kills the appetite. Rhoda stops eating for a second to ask Faya why he isn't touching his food. Faya internally thanks Rhoda, but questions how she can be so damn cheerful all the time. Faya's monologue calls out the villagers' hypocrisy, realizing this world is just cruel. Faya's internal monologue ends as he thinks he understands why Rhoda acts the way she does. Rhoda drops some philosophy, saying she hopes not to be a scumbag like these villagers. Faya gets hit with the feels, remembering Rhoda called him out for being kind earlier. Faya's internal monologue connects his mom and Tanir to Rhoda's whole "don't be cruel" speech. Polini's internal monologue finally kicks in, realizing this whole friendly village act is super suspicious. Polini questions if the food is poisoned, admitting he doesn't even trust the creepy nun. He debates warning Faya about the potential death feast before the kid takes a bite. Polini sits there thinking while Rhoda continues to inhale her food like it's her last meal. Rhoda calls out to some hiding village kids trying to act all friendly and disarming. The village kids peek out from hiding, looking absolutely terrified of the weird nun. Rhoda just straight up steals the food off Polini's plate, shocking the hell out of him. Rhoda smiles as the village kids play with Shan's ghost totem, fully committing to her holy woman act. Polini internally fumes that Rhoda stole his food, deciding she's too perceptive to be trusted. The village girl reveals their grandma got eaten by a beast, explaining why everyone's a damn coward. Faya looks horrified, expressing genuine sympathy for the kids whose grandma became monster chow. Faya's internal monologue connects the kids' loss to his own, seeing their shared trauma. Faya drops some surprisingly deep philosophy on the kids about surviving this hellscape world. The village girl says they're fine because they have Molly. This is about to get weird, isn't it? Faya asks if Molly is a dog, completely clueless about what's about to happen. Rhoda claims Molly is a cat, but the kid throws a fit, screaming the name at them. Pelini guesses Molly is a bird as someone calls for it. These three are terrible at this guessing game. Faya, Pelini, and Rhoda all react with shock as the kid reveals their pet. A chain rattles as the kid tells the group to say hello to their friend. The village girl introduces Molly, a giant scarred man she's holding on a chain. A close-up on Molly's dead eye reveals the pure madness hiding in this village. We cut to the village head's house as a villager checks on him. The village head complains that the slave trader Iron Mask hasn't delivered his new slaves. He starts coughing violently, looking like he's about to turn into a damn beast. The village head screams that he's still hungry, confirming he's losing his humanity. Another villager kicks him to the ground, calling him a useless fool. The hierarchy is crumbling. This new, equally monstrous villager threatens the village head, revealing the whole town is infected. The village head's eye spirals as he begs to offer anything, fully consumed by his desire. A mysterious voice echoes his offer back, confirming a very bad deal is about to be made. Pelini's monologue recalls an explosion, comparing the village to an inescapable trap. Pelini decides they need to bounce, knowing Rhoda's bullshit story has a short shelf life. Pelini confirms the food wasn't poisoned, but tells the group they're leaving at dawn. Rhoda agrees the village is creepy, but admits the food was great. This nun has her priorities straight. Rhoda holds Shan's ghost totem, declaring their time with the villagers is officially over. Faya calls out Pelini for pulling an all-nighter on Watch, who just brushes it off. Faya looks on silently, clearly impressed by Pelini's whole stoic protector routine. Faya asks the villagers if they can take Molly, because his hero complex is a damn liability. Faya argues to save Molly, pointing out his scars and saying this isn't living. His hero complex is officially a liability. Pelini shuts that shit down, calling Molly the village's property. Damn, dude, cold as ice. Faya loses his mind over the word property, and Rhoda tries to calm him down. The irony is killing me. Rhoda drops some philosophy about not being cruel but also not being reckless. Pick a lane, lady. Rhoda hits him with the hard questions, asking if he's gonna save every sad case they find. Rhoda reminds Faya his main quest is finding his mom, not starting a damn charity. Faya flashes back to the kids treating Molly like a pet, fueling his righteous anger. Pelini stomps the ground to interrupt the debate as Faya's eye spirals with conflict. The village girl runs up screaming for them not to go, yelling about beasts. So much for a clean getaway. The girl cries to Rhoda that a beast took her brother. The adults are once again completely useless. The village girl breaks down crying, begging the strangers her village tried to kill for help. The girl tells Faya and Pelini it's useless, having already accepted her parents are cowards. She straight up calls all the adults in the village cowards. She's not wrong. The villagers are busy praying to their comet god instead of saving a literal child. One of the villagers begs to be saved from the desires turning them into monsters. Rhoda and Pelini immediately sprint off to find the kid, leaving the prayer circle behind. Rhoda uses her creepy super senses to track the beast, yelling for Pelini to be careful. Pelini admits he doesn't trust Rhoda but follows to keep her away from Faya. Faya screams from off-screen, demanding they take him on the rescue mission. Faya calls out Pelini's hypocrisy for saving this kid, but not the slave Molly. Pelini calls out Faya's logic, but agrees you can't just pick and choose whose life matters. Pelini and Rhoda walk through a boneyard as he admits this world doesn't run on ideals. Rhoda uses her creepy super senses, warning Pelini the beast's scent is getting stronger. The duo enters a dark cave, which Rhoda confirms is the beast's nest. No turning back now. Pelini stops Rhoda from going further, deciding to take the lead himself. Smart move, dude. Pelini spots a locked wooden door in the darkness, announcing they've found the spot. The locked door creaks open on its own. Yeah, that's not a bad omen at all. The padlock shatters, broken by some shadowy tendrils from the inside. This is a trap. A close-up reveals the scarred face of Molly, the village's chained-up slave. Faya stands in the doorway, completely stunned to find Molly inside the shack. Molly looks up from the ground, weakly asking Faya who the hell he is. Faya shushes him and announces he's here to rescue him. His hero complex is officially a problem. Faya explains the villagers are hiding from a beast as he kneels beside the chained man. Faya's internal monologue kicks in, remembering Voodoo is the power to grant wishes. Here we go. He uses his voodoo to shatter Molly's chains, declaring his wish is this man's freedom. Molly stares at his freed hands in absolute shock, not comprehending what just happened. Faya gives Molly a cloak and tells him to escape, warning him about the beasts. Molly thanks Faya, revealing his sister died from the village's punishment. This place is fucked. Molly stops before leaving, telling Faya he has one question for him before he goes. He asks why Faya helped him, questioning what benefit he could possibly get from this. Faya explains Tanir taught him to have hope, unlike the scumbag Iron Mask. He preaches that to survive this world you have to be better and reach out first. Faya asks Molly to pay it forward, hoping he'll help someone else in the future. Molly just stares silently, probably wondering if this kid is for real or just naive. Molly agrees, promising Faya he will definitely repay this kindness. That sounds ominous as hell. Faya connects Molly's suffering to his mom, fueling his urgency to find her. He decides to regroup with Rhoda and Polini, finally remembering his actual mission. A voice from Shan's ghost totem suddenly calls Faya a foolish little brat. Faya realizes Mask Child is awake, who's laughing that he's already on the spiral. Mask Child declares Faya is now in a spiral he can never escape from. Great job, hero. A massive pig-like beast holds the kidnapped village kid, wearing that same damn cult necklace. Polini's six-fingered prosthetic hand glows, getting ready to unleash his signature lightning attack. Polini blasts the beast with a massive point-blank lightning strike. That's gotta leave a mark. The beast roars in agony and collapses to the ground, dropping the kid. Another one-shot kill. Polini tells Rhoda to grab the kid and run, preparing to handle the monster himself. The beast's eye widens as it screams in pain, asking who the hell they are. Polini is shocked, realizing this isn't a mindless monster but a beast with intelligence. The beast confirms it was human, yelling at the voodoo sorcerer not to interfere with its meal. The beast monologues about eating slaves, complaining the last one isn't gaining weight. It's the village head. The village head beast whines about his slave delivery from Iron Mask, and Polini looks absolutely disgusted. Molly savagely punches a villager, explaining the village head sacrificed a kid to appease the cult. The village head beast screams in confusion, launching a desperate volley of shadowy spikes. Polini gets absolutely skewered by the beast's shadowy attack. So much for an easy fight. Polini analyzes the beast's power while pinned, realizing it's fueled by souls and willpower. The village head beast has a breakdown, screaming this isn't what it wanted before demanding Polini die. Polini tells the beast to shut up, charging up another lightning strike with his prosthetic hand. Polini's six-fingered hand glows with intense blue lightning, ready to end this little pity party. Molly intercepts the attack, declaring he's sacrificing his arm to block the lightning. Polini is completely shocked as his signature lightning attack gets completely nullified by Molly. Molly transforms into a massive monster, realizing one arm wasn't enough to stop the attack. Molly's monster form screams in agony from the lightning, yelling about his bones breaking. Molly lunges forward with a massive hand, screaming for Faya to die, so much for gratitude. Faya watches as Molly's giant monster hand completely disintegrates before it can crush him. Faya's internal monologue kicks in, admitting he should have listened to Polini and Rhoda. He sits chained in his mindscape, wondering if everyone would be alive if he'd just done nothing. Mask Child appears behind Faya, agreeing that his choice was full of regret. The Elwa tells Faya that Molly would have just lived a life of suffering anyway. Mask Child calls Faya's good deed a foolish act with a meaningless price. The Loa explains that breaking chains of revenge only creates more chains to trap you. Mask Child reveals they're inside its nest, the mask, and the chains are Faya's karma. Mask Child tells Faya that killing Iron Mask was just the beginning of his problems. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. The Elwa calls out Faya's hypocrisy, asking why some people deserve to die but not others. It's using his own logic against him. Mask Child compares Faya's struggle to a fly trapped in a spiral. That's a pretty sick metaphor for his current L. The Elwa shows Faya the endless spiral of desire he's now trapped in. Welcome to the consequences of your actions, kid. Faya declares he's made a decision after getting his ass handed to him by reality. This can't be good. Faya makes a deal with Mask Child as his body starts glowing. He's officially sold his soul for more power. We cut back to Faya's unconscious body on the ground. The deal with the devil knocked him out cold. Polini holds Faya's limp body, screaming for him to wake up. A little late for that, my guy. Faya's eyes are open but completely vacant as Polini asks if he's okay. He's not home right now. A close-up of Faya's eye shows a spiral, confirming the Elwa is back in the driver's seat. Shan's ghost totem screams as the cross on its forehead glows intensely. That's the voodoo equivalent of a check engine light. The little ghost totem completely shatters in a burst of light. So much for Shan's precious gift. Polini's internal monologue asks if there was another way. Yeah, maybe not letting the traumatized kid make all the calls. Polini's frog spirit broods as he monologues about regretting the past. A little late for that, my guy. Rhoda tells Polini that Faya freeing the slave isn't the real problem here. She's surprisingly pragmatic for a chaos agent. Polini cries, wondering if only the karma of the dead comes back. Welcome to the consequences of your inaction, dude. Rhoda recalls Faya mentioning 2 slave wagons leaving the logging camp. She's finally putting the pieces together. Polini confirms one wagon was for the forest witch, and the other was for the beast village head. This whole supply chain is cursed. Rhoda holds the ghost totem, stating the second wagon's location is unknown. Another loose end in this absolute train wreck. Polini clenches his prosthetic hand, wondering how long the village was corrupt. Bro, the corpse scarecrows were a clue. Polini lies impaled on the ground, realizing the village head beast is somehow still kicking. The village head beast's severed head questions Rhoda, who just stares at the talking corpse. The village head beast starts his villain monologue, claiming they'll never understand his pain. His flashback reveals he was a war survivor who claims the cruel world forced his hand. He explains his desire to rebuild his village became a power source, trapping him in a spiral. He admits he got drunk on the power and his own desire ended up devouring him whole. The beast calls the sorcerers arrogant, asking if they really think they can escape the same fate. With its last breath, the beast warns Polini that he's destined for the same damn path. Polini clenches his bloody prosthetic hand, calling out to Rhoda after that ominous warning. Polini finally confronts Rhoda, asking what she desires and how she can preach kindness in this hellscape. Rhoda explains that strong desire turns people into beasts, just like the village head. She drops her tragic backstory, revealing her dad was a voodoo sorcerer hiding from the cult. Rhoda admits her own father became a beast, and Polini looks absolutely stunned by the reveal. Polini immediately questions her story, still not trusting this chaos agent one bit. Rhoda says the cult forced her to become a nun to atone for her father's sins. She explains she has to carry her father's burden as a little ghost totem looks on. Polini's internal monologue realizes her unreadable nature is just a survival mechanism. His monologue questions Rhoda's story, then immediately questions his own damn hypocrisy. His internal conflict flashes back to his cynical words versus Faya's naive idealism. Polini's monologue ends with him admitting he's a hypocrite. Took him long enough. Polini's internal monologue admits he used to be an idealist before this world broke him. He now sees his past idealism as a sin he has to atone for. This guy needs a therapist. Polini gets called an idiot mid-monologue, completely breaking his emo train of thought. A flashback shows Faya carrying a boar, while Mask Child whines about not being used for a simple hunt. Mask Child throws a fit, screaming at Faya for ignoring its offer of power. This Elwa is needy as hell. Faya drops the boar in front of Polini and Rhoda, explaining it's the only thing he could catch. He blames Mask Child for being so damn noisy that it scared off all the other animals. Polini gives Faya a deadpan good work, while Rhoda just silently observes the whole exchange. Rhoda gets way too close to Polini, asking if Faya's attitude is just him going through puberty. Faya yells at Mask Child as we learn his body is aging as payment for their voodoo deal. Shan's little ghost totem happily prepares the meal, completely oblivious to the chaos about to unfold. Faya and Rhoda absolutely inhale their food like animals, while Polini just watches in stoic disappointment. Rhoda gives Faya a blessing, calling mealtime the happiest part of the day. She has no idea what's coming. Faya straight up snatches the sandwich out of Rhoda's hands. The kid's got no chill anymore. Faya yells at Rhoda for his sandwich, complaining he's still hungry. The Elwa deal apparently comes with a black hole for a stomach. Mask Child cheers on the petty food fight before Faya smashes the mask into the ground. Faya tells the Elwa to shut its non-existent mouth while Rhoda fumes over her stolen meal. Polini just watches the whole shit show unfold with the dead-eyed stare of a tired babysitter. Polini's internal monologue confirms Faya's been acting different since that whole village massacre. No shit, dude. He wonders if it's the Elwa deal or the mask, because Faya's personality just did a complete 180. Polini's monologue notes Shan's seal is gone from the mask, connecting it to Faya's new attitude. Polini asks Rhoda her plans, and she says she has to leave to spread her cult's gospel. Polini decides they should part ways with the Chaos Nun after this meal. Smartest move all day. Faya's sandwich suddenly gets swarmed by a disgusting pile of insects. That's just disrespectful. Faya recoils in disgust, violently throwing the bug-infested food to the ground. Rhoda is surprised Polini screamed, but Faya calls her out for wasting food, citing his slave past. Polini yells at them to focus, pointing out this is obviously a voodoo attack. A grotesque boil suddenly swells up on Polini's face. The voodoo wasn't for the sandwich. The boil on Polini's face explodes in a shower of gore as he screams for everyone to run. Faya gets a front row seat to the horror, the bloody explosion reflected in his eye. Faya screams Polini's name as his mentor lies on the ground with his face blown apart. A close-up shows Polini's face is a grotesque, bubbling mess from the voodoo plague. The boils on Polini's face morph into a horrifying mass of eyes and ears. A mysterious entity's eyes appear, identifying the voodoo attack as plague. A creepy voodoo fly buzzes as the attacker's voice notes someone is unaffected by the attack. A new character with a stitched arm questions how someone could resist their insect poison. The new skull mask girl holds a bug-infested totem, admitting things aren't going as planned. Faya demands to know why another voodoo sorcerer is attacking them with giant symbols. Faya realizes this new sorcerer was also responsible for the plague at the Beast Village. The skull mask girl gives a one-word answer to Faya's questions. Mushroom. The skull mask girl unleashes a massive mushroom spore explosion on our heroes, so her whole gimmick is being a walking biohazard. Faya and Mask Child stand together in the aftermath, looking completely unfazed. Guess the Elwa deal came with poison resistance. The skull mask girl complains she vaporized the bodies she was supposed to collect. Great! Another psycho with a delivery quota. She mentions a promise to the forest witch Shan before reaching for a mushroom. Of course, Shan is connected to this new brand of crazy. Faya's voodoo tendrils suddenly pierce a hand and the skull mask girl is shocked. He's not just resisting, he's counterattacking. Someone coughs in the distance, declaring the fight isn't over yet. You can't keep a good traumatized kid down. Faya stands up, identifying her voodoo as the plague from the Beast Village. He's connecting the dots on his trauma tour. He confirms he recognizes her plague voodoo from his own village's massacre. This just got extremely personal for him. The skull mask girl is stunned he's alive and blames the forest witch. Everyone in this world knows each other, huh? A new kid in a frog mask flashes back to being helpless during a plague, introducing another trauma victim to the party. The frog mask kid's flashback reveals she became a sorceress to achieve a specific goal. Rhoda lies on the ground, her face covered in boils, calling out Faya's name. So much for the cult's protection. The flashback shows the frog mask kid was too weak as a child to even break a slave's chains. The skull mask girl watches her own trauma monologue, wondering if she's finally lost it. Yes you have. Faya, back in his mindscape, announces he's made a decision. This is never good news for anyone. He tells Mask Child he's ready to make another deal. This kid's only problem-solving skill is selling his soul. Mask Child asks what Faya could possibly offer, since he already gave up everything. The Elwa is calling him spiritually broke. Faya offers his guilt and conscience, deciding to go full dark side for a power boost. He demands to use the Elwa's power by adding new conditions to their deal. He's trying to renegotiate with a demon. Faya's eye stares with desperation as he asks if Mask Child will accept his new, terrible terms. Mask Child agrees to Faya's deal, offering 10 minutes of control for his conscience. Faya finalizes the deal, admitting he's useless without the Elwa's power. Back in reality, a powered-up Faya tells the Elwa to shut up and give him weapons. The Elwa yells back through the mask, refusing to be ordered around by a brat. Faya asserts his new dominance, telling the Elwa to just follow his commands. The skull mask girl says Faya should have just died quietly instead of using that mask. Faya retorts that he has promises to keep, setting up the inevitable edgy showdown. Faya's internal monologue decides to ditch all guilt and regret to survive this world. He accepts he's trapped in the spiral of desire, chained to his Elwa. Faya declares if they're chained together, he's going to be the one holding the leash. Faya, in full Elwa mode, declares he'll get revenge on the forest witch. His priorities are still straight, even when he's possessed. The skull mask girl sarcastically calls his plan good, then taunts him about defeating a genius. The ego on this new psycho is impressive. Faya lunges at the skull mask girl, who braces for impact. Let the edgy, trauma-fueled battle begin. The narration confirms their resentments are colliding. Yeah, it's a clash of tragic backstories and bad decisions. Their powers collide in a massive explosion that shatters the landscape. So much for a subtle fight in the woods. Faya gets blasted by a wave of mushroom spikes, screaming that it hurts. The Elwa power-up apparently doesn't come with a pain-off switch. The skull mask girl, now with a frog skull, calls him disgustingly tough. She's actually surprised he survived that. She boasts about her endless mushrooms while Faya and Mask Child argue mid-fight. Their new partnership is already a toxic mess. The skull mask girl summons a giant mushroom fist, calling out her attack Shiitake. She's really committing to the whole fungus theme. Mask Child's eye is shown as it screams in frustration. The Elwa is absolutely livid that Faya is fumbling its power. Faya has a crisis of confidence mid-fight, realizing he's a total noob compared to this psycho. Mask Child screams at Faya to stop thinking, and he just screams right back at the Elwa. Faya decides to just brute force his way through the endless mushroom storm with pure grit. He realizes cutting the mushrooms is pointless since they just grow back instantly. So much for that plan. The Skull Mask Girl taunts him, saying her willpower makes her mushroom supply infinite. Mask Child challenges her claim, ready to call her bluff with some shonen protagonist energy. Faya declares he'll just keep attacking until she's completely out of juice. It's a battle of wills now. The Skull Mask Girl is shocked as a piece of debris flies past her face. The plan wasn't the mushrooms. She gets pissed, yelling at Faya for not knowing his place and just dying already. Her ego is bruised. Mask Child's power activates through the mask as it calls Faya a stupid brat. The real fight starts now. Mask Child roasts Faya's fighting style, and Faya just tells his inner demon to shut up. The Elwa offers to take over, but Faya's ego is too big to let the actual powerhouse drive. The Skull Mask Girl realizes Faya is literally arguing with his Elwa for control mid-fight. The Skull Mask Girl gets cocky, thinking she can beat this dysfunctional duo without going all out. Faya complains he can't use his root Voodoo, hitting a skill tree bug in the middle of a boss fight. He realizes he can't use his Voodoo and the mask's power at once as mushrooms grow on his foot. The Skull Mask Girl attacks as we get a Voodoo 101 reminder that willpower is everything. The Voodoo attacks collide with a massive impact because subtlety is for side characters. The narration explains that the greater the desire, the more busted your powers get. Faya taps into his trauma-fueled desire, confirming he's about to get a shonen power-up. The Skull Mask Girl lectures Faya mid-fight, explaining Voodoo talent is all about control. The narration continues, defining Voodoo as the control of desire while Faya dodges attacks. The Voodoo lesson explains talent is knowing exactly what you desire, unlike our confused protagonist. The lesson concludes that talent is acting to achieve your desire, which she's doing with mushrooms. The Skull Mask Girl stomps on a mushroom, using it to launch herself into the air. She stands on a giant mushroom pillar, looking down on Faya and Mask Child. The Skull Mask Girl asks Faya what promise is making him fight so damn hard. Faya yells back that it's a promise he made to his mom. Don't give her ammo, kid. The Skull Mask Girl calls him stupid for trying to die over a trivial promise to his mom. She says a mom is just another person, and Faya is completely stunned by her cold-ass logic. The Skull Mask Girl preaches that family is just a meaningless blood connection. Another villain with parental issues, what a shocker. She continues her edgy monologue saying breaking bonds is the only way to be free. Yeah, tell that to Faya's mom quest. Her nihilistic speech ends with her declaring everyone is free from the past. This psycho is trying to give a TED Talk mid-fight. Faya internally calls her philosophy bullshit while worrying about his 10-minute Elwa power-up timer. He's got a deadline to beat her ass. His monologue reminds us he traded his conscience for 10 minutes of power. After that, Mask Child takes over the driver's seat. Faya knows he has to win fast to save his friends from the plague. The stakes are getting higher by the second. Faya clenches his fist, focusing all his willpower into his desire to win. He's about to unleash some serious pain. The Skull Mask Girl watches Faya power up from her mushroom perch. She's about to find out what happens when you monologue too long. Faya unleashes a massive attack, screaming her freedom philosophy right back at her. He's weaponizing her own edgy bullshit. Faya calls her out, yelling that her freedom was just an excuse to plague his village. He's connecting all the dots of his trauma tour. Faya screams, demanding to know what the hell the Forest Witch's master plan is. He's finally blaming Shan for all this bullshit. Faya decides to cut out the middleman and just go ask Shan himself, launching forward. This kid's only plan is go fast and hit hard. Faya's internal monologue drops a bombshell. The woman he's trying to save isn't his real mom. Well, that complicates the main quest. The Skull Mask Girl reacts with a deadpan really to Faya's entire life crisis reveal. She's got the emotional range of a rock. She makes a finger gun and tells him to die, officially ending her TED Talk. This psycho's got no time for family drama. Faya gets impaled by a massive pink horn, taking a critical hit from behind. So much for that big dramatic charge. Faya spits blood inside his mask, confirming that attack did some serious internal damage. The Elwa power-up didn't come with armor. The Skull Mask Girl reveals he inhaled her spores, and his organs are rotting from the inside. She's literally calling him out for being a loudmouth. Faya's body mutates with grotesque horns as the Skull Mask girl lectures him on his own decay. This is just a biology lesson with extra steps. The Skull Mask girl taunts Faya, asking how it feels to rot alive. She's really savoring this victory, the absolute psycho. The Skull Mask girl taunts Faya that his friends are dead, calling them worthless. Polini lies on the ground, telling someone it's just bad luck. This dude's given up. Polini finds Rhoda's body inside what's described as Faya's voodoo roots. Polini is paralyzed by the plague, his hand looking like a damn skeleton. He checks on Rhoda, who's also down for the count with a face full of plague boils. Polini struggles to summon his Elwa before the plague takes him out completely. A monstrous insect creature appears, confirming the plague comes with nightmare fuel summons. A crying skull symbol appears as centipedes crawl out of its eyes. This girl's aesthetic is pure horror. The voodoo insects swarm towards Polini's paralyzed body, ready for a 5-star meal. Polini realizes the voodoo bugs are literally eating away at his life force. Rhoda is down bad from the plague, hallucinating and asking her dead dad if Faya is okay. Her plague-fueled nightmare continues as she apologizes to her dad, trying to run from a memory. Rhoda's flashback reveals a heretic inquisitor is coming, confirming the cult she serves hunted her family. Faya looks completely baffled, having just been told his friends are already dead. We see Faya's body, impaled and covered in horns, lying defeated in a field of mushrooms. The Skull Mask girl is genuinely surprised Faya is still breathing after taking that much damage. Faya pushes himself off the ground, cursing the mushroom psycho. This kid just refuses to stay down. Mask Child reminds Faya he's got 2 minutes left on their power-up deal. The clock is ticking, hero. The Skull Mask girl calls his time limit meaningless, confident she'll kill him before it runs out. She flexes her ego, calling herself a voodoo genius and offering to school the novice Faya. Faya coughs on the ground, asking why every voodoo sorcerer has to be a damn lecturer. The Skull Mask girl calls Faya out, saying she doesn't sense any real desperation from him. She reveals her own desire is resentment, just like Faya's Elwa. Great, they're trauma twins. The Skull Mask girl defines resentment as the pure wish to harm other people. She breaks down resentment into anger, hatred, and grudge. Thanks for the vocabulary lesson. She asks if they're terrible, and Faya just tells her to shut the hell up. The Skull Mask girl internally questions why Faya doesn't seem desperate enough to her. Faya gets right in her face, telling her not to make him laugh. The comeback is on. He throws down a mushroom-covered object, repeating her own definition of resentment back at her. Faya crushes the mushroom under his foot, ready to show her what real resentment looks like. The Skull Mask girl's eyes go wide, agreeing with Faya's whole resentment speech. Faya gives her a 1-minute deadline to die as we flash back to her tragic origin story. The Frog Mask kid recalls her mom was a healer during a plague outbreak. Here comes the trauma dump. Her flashback describes the plague victims melting like butter. Yeah, that'll mess a kid up. The Frog Mask kid remembers some key advice her mom gave her back in the day. Her mom explains that the plague makes people fall into deep, inescapable dreams. She clarifies they're not dreams, but endless nightmares as a body explodes in the background. Rhoda's plague-fueled nightmare reveals a heretic inquisitor is coming for her and her dad. Polini, paralyzed on the ground, overhears Rhoda's delirious confession and looks absolutely stunned. Polini grabs Rhoda's cloak, screaming at her to repeat what she just said about the Inquisitor. Polini's eye widens in shock, demanding to know if Rhoda knows the heretic Inquisitor. Polini desperately shakes Rhoda, demanding to know when and where she met this guy. He keeps screaming for an answer as her blindfold starts to unravel. Dude is losing it. Rhoda's eye snaps open, looking like a damn monster as Polini screams her name. Polini finally collapses from the plague, completely overwhelmed by the voodoo insects. A title card drops for Episode 8, Crying Mask. Oh great, it's the Mushroom Psycho's origin story. The countdown hits 60 seconds as Faya clenches his fist. He's got 1 minute left on his deal. The Skull Mask girl worries about Mask Child taking over Faya's body after the time limit. She internally boasts that her decay voodoo has the advantage over Faya's roots. She summons a massive mushroom shield called Lingji, just as Faya's attack lands. The Skull Mask girl monologues about her shield, planning to gas Faya with more spores. Faya's voodoo-powered sword smashes through her defense as the countdown hits 52 seconds. The Skull Mask girl is completely stunned. Faya just shattered her rock-hard mushroom shield. She calls Faya persistent as his sword flies away after the impact. Understatement of the year. Faya forms a hand sign and calls out his next voodoo attack, Horn! He impales her through the head with his voodoo horn attack as the timer hits 48 seconds. The Skull Mask Girl's body hits the ground, already sprouting mushrooms. That's what you get. Faya looks at his mutated body, realizing he's running out of time to save his friends. His internal monologue coldly states his friends are no longer his concern. The deal is kicking in. Faya readies his voodoo blades, deciding he needs to close the distance to finish her off. Faya's internal monologue screams for more speed as he rockets forward. Bro is literally weaponizing his own main character energy. The timer hits 42 seconds as Faya closes the distance like a damn freight train. Faya keeps pushing his speed, determined to reach the mushroom psycho before his time is up. He's moving so fast he's shattering the ground beneath him. So much for a stealthy approach. Faya screams as he weaves through the battlefield, fully committed to this high-speed beatdown. The Skull Mask girl is stunned he's still got this much fight in him as the timer hits 36 seconds. The Skull Mask girl's monologue reveals she's about to unleash her next move. Oh great, another lecture is coming. She realizes Faya is converting his raw desire to kill her directly into power. That's one hell of a feedback loop. Her monologue reveals she's rotting his brain, but he's just regenerating it on the fly. This kid's running on pure spite. The Skull Mask girl wonders if he can even feel pain as the timer hits 31 seconds. He traded his conscience, not his nerves, lady. The Skull Mask girl punches the ground, screaming for Faya to stop his relentless charge. Her punch creates a massive shockwave, a last-ditch effort to halt his insane momentum. Faya's spiral eye shows he's completely locked in, totally ignoring her desperate counter. The Skull Mask girl realizes Faya can still feel pain, he's just pushing through it. She concludes he's missing something as a human. Yeah, it's his conscience, he sold it. She finally understands the look in his eyes, realizing he's been dead serious this whole time. The narration asks if Faya has thrown away his human heart. The answer is a hard yes. The Skull Mask girl decides to match his energy, preparing to throw away her own humanity. The timer hits 10 seconds as she unleashes a massive attack, offering some last advice. At 9 seconds, she explains Elwa's desire, value, from their sorcerers. Another damn lecture. The Skull Mask girl explains the more you sacrifice, the more power you get. Another voodoo lecture at the worst possible time. She says offering forbidden things makes you stronger, flashing back to her own trauma. So that's her excuse for being a psycho. A text box explains her philosophy. If it's not perfect, it gets thrown away. Sounds like someone has some serious parental issues. She screams that Faya's voodoo is useless, trying to break his will with a glowing red spiral. Classic villain mind games. At 6 seconds, she starts listing names while making a hand sign. Is she naming her attacks or her dead pets? At 5 seconds, she lists more names while charging Faya. Oh, she's naming her failed experiments or victims. That's dark. At 4 seconds, she screams more names with a look of pure agony. She's weaponizing her entire tragic backstory now. She unleashes her decay attack, combining all that trauma into a single move. This is her ultimate pity party attack. At 3 seconds, she calls out Fungal Dance, dodging Faya's attack. She's really putting on a whole performance here. At 2 seconds, she traps Faya in a prison of poison with a completely insane grin. She's finally cornered him. At 2 seconds, a giant skeletal beast appears out of nowhere, crashing their little trauma party. At 1 second, both Faya and the Skull Mask girl look completely stunned by the new arrival. The timer hits 0 as the new beast's arrival causes a massive, ground-shattering impact. Faya lies defeated on the ground, his body twisted into a monstrous form now that the deal is up. The Skull Mask girl eats dirt, completely baffled as to how her genius plan just went to shit. Faya's new monster form looks on as the Skull Mask girl questions the sudden beatdown. The Skull Mask girl wonders where the hell this new skeletal beast even came from. She speculates the new monster is Faya's companion, completely misreading the damn room. The Skull Mask girl admits she's out of willpower, mistaking the beast for Faya's Lua. An unseen person yells for Toru to retreat, revealing the mushroom psycho has a name and a partner. Mask Child screams at the mushroom psycho for running away after he just got the keys to Faya's body. The Skull Mask girl, Toru, confirms she's dipping out, not even trying to hide her tactical retreat. The unseen partner calls Toru a crying mask, revealing a new player in this absolute mess. The partner promises a rematch while Mask Child's monster form is confused by the crying mask comment. The mysterious partner makes a ridiculously fast exit, leaving Mask Child completely in the dust. The giant skeletal beast gets Mask Child's attention by slamming its hand down right next to him. The beast just grabs Mask Child mid-sentence, completely ignoring his whole I'm in charge now vibe. A close-up reveals the skeletal beast has a heart-shaped face hole and looks absolutely terrifying. Mask Child realizes the skeletal beast is actually Rhoda, who's transformed into a monster. What the hell? Rhoda's unconscious face confirms she didn't die from the plague. She just turned into a damn beast. Rhoda's beast form holds Mask Child, who says this is perfect for a one-on-one fight. Mask Child's spiral eye glows as he prepares to unleash his Elwa powers on the transformed nun. The Elwa taunts Rhoda's incomplete beast form, promising to enjoy this little beatdown. Pellini lies on the ground, completely paralyzed by the plague and calling out Rhoda's name. Pellini's internal monologue finally catches up, realizing Rhoda's a beast and Faya's possessed. He admits he's also down with the plague, making him completely useless in this shit show. Pellini has a full-blown breakdown, wondering how he managed to fail this spectacularly again. A wooden charm falls as Pellini's monologue hints at another past failure. This dude's got issues. A massive, muscular figure suddenly drops from the sky, about to crash the Elwa's party. The new guy lands and Mask Child is completely stunned, asking who the hell he is. Mask Child asks the new guy who he is, and the dude just tells him it's bedtime. The new guy one-punches Rhoda's beast form, sending her flying like a damn ragdoll. A glowing orb of light shoots through the darkness, clearly aimed at the other problem child. The orb slams into Mask Child's monster form, blowing him to smithereens. This guy doesn't do long fights. Pellini watches from the ground, completely mind-blown that this dude just handled two monsters barehanded. The new guy holds Rhoda's unconscious body, as Pellini spots a familiar-looking emblem on him. The new guy scolds them for wasting a bug-infested sandwich. Bro just saved them and is now giving a lecture on food waste. Pellini's internal monologue confirms he recognizes that damn emblem from somewhere important. He realizes the emblem is from Maze, their final destination. The plot just walked right up to them. The emblem is revealed to be from the Voodoo Sorcerer Organization House. The professionals are finally here. The new guy with the creepy mask tells a paralyzed Pellini he was looking for them. A title card confirms a new, absurdly strong ally has arrived. Yeah, no shit, he just ended a boss fight in 2 hits. We get a lore dump about the Emperor reviving slavery and the Voodoo Sorcerers fighting back. The narration explains the Sorcerer's city of Maze is the center of a slave liberation movement. This whole revolution was started by 9 Voodoo sorcerers who just wanted to be free. The revolutionary group is called House, and our new guy is one of the founding members. A flashback shows a member stepping forward as the narration hypes up their revolution. We see the back of a House member in a fancy uniform. These guys have a dress code. A flashback shows someone gripping prison bars, confirming this revolution was born from suffering. The flashback shows the House members meeting at a round table, planning their next move. A woman with a mushroom hat looks down, another one of the House revolutionaries. A close-up reveals a scarred dude with an eye patch, clearly one of the House OGs. The eye patch guy complains about his crew ditching the round table meeting. Some revolution this is. He continues complaining that his teammates are unreliable as a new member finally arrives. A little fox-like creature with a mask pops up on the big guy's shoulder. The big guy with a smiley mask drags in the captured mushroom psycho, who's begging for her life. The mushroom psycho is tied to a chair, demanding to know where the hell she is. She struggles against her ropes, trying to figure out who these new clowns are. A dude with a literal skull for a head asks if the whole dysfunctional family is here. The eye patch guy agrees to start as the skull laughs, and Toru realizes she's in a meeting with a talking skeleton. Toru demands answers while tied up, assuming they're with the forest witch. Everyone's connected to Shan, apparently. The skull guy starts the house meeting, pointing out half the members are missing. Great start for a revolution. The skull guy absolutely loses his shit, screaming that all the missing members are gone. This dude is the HR department. A drunk priestess clarifies one was killed, one is missing, and 2 are on missions. At least someone's keeping minutes. The priestess introduces their captive, calling Toru a cocky slave brat. Damn, she got demoted fast. The eye patch guy takes over, deciding to introduce this dysfunctional revolutionary crew. Finally, a competent adult. The eye patch guy introduces himself as Tooth, the leader of this whole operation. Solid name, my dude. Tooth introduces the drunk priestess Yura, who apparently healed our heroes off-screen. The healer is an alcoholic. Perfect. He introduces the old man Javo, the group's powerhouse who's already unimpressed with the new girl. Tooth introduces Tango, a dude with a mushroom for a head who can't even speak. Toru must feel so called out. Tooth introduces the smiley masked giant Yakan, the dude who rescued Faya's crew. He also introduces the little fox beast Mojori, who is currently biting Yakan's hand. Tooth explains to the captive Toru that they're in Maze, the city of Voodoo sorcerers. Yakan complains about his pet biting him while trying to sound cool explaining their group. Yakan gives their revolutionary group the edgy name, Those Who Walk Upon the Spiral. Toru's eye reflects a spiral, confirming she knows exactly what that damn metaphor means. Tooth picks up Shan's little ghost totem, instantly recognizing the forest witch's work. He explains Yakan found someone wandering with an invitation from Shan near the fight. A flashback shows the little ghost totem acting as a mail carrier for the forest witch. Tooth declares his absolute trust in Shan before interrogating her little ghost minion. Big mistake, dude. Tooth interrogates Faya, asking why he's here and calling him a girl. Faya, still tied to a chair, tells them to untie him before he answers any questions. Faya glares, demanding they stop calling him a kid. This Elwa deal gave him an attitude. Faya's eye glows red as he states his name and his quest to find his mom. Tooth apologizes while the old man Javo complains about Faya's complete lack of respect. The drunk priestess Yura calls Faya a bold little thing, clearly enjoying the drama. Yakan laughs his ass off while his little fox beast Moyori keeps biting his shoulder. Faya listens as someone off-screen calls him an interesting new member. Welcome to the circus, kid. We cut to a new horned character sitting inside a voodoo ritual circle. Great, another one. The horned character exhales a small orb of light, clearly in the middle of some ritual. Polini's hand offers a cup, telling someone to drink. No time for pleasantries, just hydration. Polini gives Rhoda a glass of milk, explaining it helps with beast transformation after effects. Rhoda confirms she's recovering, downplaying the poison that nearly killed them all. Sure, Jan. Polini explains Maze's citywide voodoo prevents beast transformations. Sounds like a damn paradise. Polini sits down to interrogate Rhoda, finally ready to get some damn answers from the Chaos Nun. He asks her about the heretic inquisitor she was screaming about while plague-ridden. Polini asks if this was her first time turning into a monster, or if she's been hiding it. Rhoda denies trying to deceive them, admitting she's been a beast before. Yeah, we're not buying it. She reveals her first transformation was 7 years ago, when a heretic hunt started. Rhoda explains the heretic inquisitor's visit triggered her first transformation when she was a kid. Rhoda explains to Polini that sorcerers with strong desires are a huge problem. We've seen that firsthand, thanks for the recap. She reveals her dad went beast mode and was so OP the cult couldn't stop him. So going nuclear runs in the family, got it. Rhoda says the cult just quarantined her dad, leaving him to suffer forever. The cult's solution to everything is just walk away. She admits she became a nun hoping to forget her father's fate. That's a hell of a coping mechanism that clearly didn't work. Polini looks down, saying this isn't what he wanted. Bro, you're the king of getting dragged into other people's trauma. Rhoda suggests Polini's voodoo might be the key to solving her problem. Oh, here comes the big, emotionally devastating favor. Rhoda asks Polini to kill her beast father, finally dropping the bombshell. She's asking for a mercy killing, damn. Polini calls her out for being dead serious after she tries to backtrack. He knows a desperate request when he hears one. Polini turns away, saying he needs time to think about her murder request. He's not exactly jumping at the chance to be her hitman. Rhoda hopes he'll agree, putting her faith in the most cynical man alive. This is going to end well for absolutely no one. Polini tells the new horned character to go control Faya, admitting he snitched on him. The horned character has a full-blown panic attack over the horns that just sprouted from his head. Polini, still looking cracked from the plague, tells the guy not to worry about the random horns. The horned character lies down, concluding that all voodoo sorcerers are a bunch of weirdos. He wakes up screaming because his pillow is actually Tango's detached, snoring head. Faya asks the mushroom man Tango if he can eat his own disembodied head. The Lawa deal broke this kid. Shan's little ghost totem screams at Yakan to control his chaotic fox beast Mojori. The old man Javo sighs, complaining that this revolutionary headquarters is always pure chaos. Javo sarcastically whines that kids today have no respect for adults. Read the room, old man. Tooth, the eye patch leader, finally tells Javo to shut up so they can start the meeting. Tooth recaps how Faya clapped Iron Mask, but the real big bad is still the forest witch. He lays out Faya's mom quest and connects the captured mushroom psycho to their boy Tango. We flash back to Tooth opening a jar, looking like he's about to see something nasty. Tooth is completely grossed out by Mass Child's head floating in a jar. They literally bottled the demon. The skull guy explains they have to deal with the mask first because Elwa contracts are a bitch. Faya asks if they can just find his mom to end the deal. My guy still thinks there's an easy out. Yakan explains Faya's everything deal is a lifetime subscription to suffering with no cancellation policy. Tango sits on Faya, explaining he might not even get his body back. Talk about kicking a man while he's down. Faya asks what to do now that sealing the mask is impossible. He's finally run out of bad ideas. Polini chimes in, saying there's only one place left to go. Here we go, another suicide mission. The horned character holds a Polini mask, calling their next destination an alien place. Polini names the spot as the Kamosai Charm Market, a cesspool of desire. We get a shot of the market, which looks like every haunted house ever. A flashback starts with a miserable-looking kid, who is definitely the horned character. The kid flinches as his tragic backstory is about to officially begin. A shady-looking dude approaches the kid, asking where the adults are. Classic stranger danger. The new guy asks the kid if any voodoo sorcerers have ever visited his village. The kid looks up, completely confused by the question. This is how all bad decisions start.